Imagine being buried alive, fully conscious, unable to move a single muscle, hearing every shovel of dirt hit your coffin lid. In 1923, workers opened 9 graves in Charleston St. Michael's Cemetery. Inside every coffin, deep scratch marks clawed from the inside, bodies positioned like they'd been fighting for their lives. What they found next, a leather journal buried under a magnolia tree, revealed the most calculated revenge plot in American history. This is the story of Solomon Fairfax, a healer who became a killer, and 9 men who learned that justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Hit that subscribe button right now if you're into real history they don't teach in schools. Drop a comment telling me where you're from, because what you're about to hear isn't just revenge. It's about what happens when you strip away every legal option, every human right, every shred of dignity from a person. Charleston, 1851, where fortunes were built on human misery, and where one man decided that if the law wouldn't give him justice, he'd create his own. Solomon Fairfax wasn't your typical slave. This guy had been educated, could read, write, knew Latin medical terms. He worked for Dr. Cornelius Hathaway in Charleston, preparing complex pharmaceutical compounds that impressed even trained physicians. Patients requested him specifically, his gentle manner, his knowledge, his steady hands. For 32 years, Solomon had lived on the Pemberton plantation with his wife Celia and 3 kids, Marcus, 8, Samuel, 6, and Grace, just 4. He'd saved countless lives with his healing skills, even treated the Pemberton family when they got sick. But then Edmund Pemberton's gambling debts caught up with him. March 14th, 1851. Pemberton decided to sell Solomon's wife and children to cover his losses. Solomon spent the night before holding his family close, memorizing their faces, knowing sunrise would bring permanent separation. When the slave traders came, Solomon watched his family loaded into a wagon with 6 other families being torn apart. Halfway to Charleston, the wagon hit a rut. Celia fell out, hit her head on a rock, blood everywhere. The slave traders looked at her bleeding on the ground and made a business decision. She's a loss. Keep moving. They left her dying on the roadside while Solomon screamed and fought against his shackles. At the Charleston slave market, it got worse. Marcus sold to work in alligator-infested rice swamps. Samuel bought by a cotton farmer known for working slaves to death. Little Grace disappeared into Savannah as a house servant. All 3 children scattered. Wife left dying. Everything Solomon loved, destroyed in one day. That night, in his room above Dr. Hathaway's practice, Solomon started a journal. Today I watched my wife and children burn, and I did nothing to stop it. But I'm still alive, and I remember every face, every name, every voice that laughed as my world ended. They think they have broken me, but they have only taught me patience. For a year, Solomon did his job perfectly. Quiet, competent, but he was conducting a different study, learning everything about Charleston's wealthy families. He identified 9 men connected to his family's destruction. Some had been at the auction bidding on humans like livestock. Others financed slave traders. All profited from destroying families. Solomon researched exotic plant toxins in the doctor's library, found a compound from the Amazon, a vine that could induce complete paralysis while leaving the victim fully conscious. They'd appear dead, but their mind would be totally clear. You'd hear the doctor pronounce you dead. Feel your body being prepared for burial. Be aware as they lowered your coffin into the ground. As dirt started hitting the lid, hours to think about what you'd done before you finally suffocated. Solomon spent months perfecting the compound, testing dosages, making it colorless, odorless, undetectable when mixed with medication. December 15th, 1852, Colonel Reginald Fitzpatrick came for his monthly gout treatment. Fitzpatrick had joked at that auction about the breeding potential of children being sold. Solomon's children. Dr. Hathaway was busy, so Solomon handled the treatment alone, added precise drops of his compound to the medication. Fitzpatrick drank it without question. As the toxin worked, as Fitzpatrick grew weak, Solomon sat beside him and spoke quietly. "Colonel Fitzpatrick, my name is Solomon Fairfax. You destroyed my family on March 14th, 1851. You laughed when my children were sold. Do you remember? Fitzpatrick's eyes showed recognition. Horror. He tried to speak, but couldn't. You're not dying yet, Colonel. The medicine has paralyzed every muscle, but your mind is clear. Dr. Hathaway will pronounce you dead from heart failure. Tomorrow you'll be buried. Solomon leaned closer. But you won't actually die until hours after you're buried. You'll be completely aware as the dirt covers your coffin. You'll have plenty of time to think about what you did to my children. When Dr. Hathaway came in, Solomon reported, "The colonel has passed, doctor." His heart gave out. Very peaceful. No suspicion. The body was removed for burial. That night, Solomon wrote, "Colonel Fitzpatrick has paid. 8 more remain." Judge Marcus Calvert became victim number 2, the man who'd legally justified separating slave families. But in March 1853, Dr. Hathaway announced he was hiring a junior partner trained in forensic medicine. Solomon's timeline got compressed. He had to work faster, which led to a mistake. Too much compound in Judge Calvert's treatment. The death happened too quickly. Dr. Hathaway noticed. The muscle rigidity seems unusual. And his eyes, there's something desperate about them. For terrifying minutes, Solomon thought he was exposed, but the doctor concluded it was a severe stroke. Judge Calvert was buried. However, at the funeral, Solomon noticed journalist Thomas Grimby taking careful notes. Grimby was investigating the prominent death phenomenon, too many wealthy citizens dying unexpectedly. Captain William Dandridge became victim 3, at a dinner party Solomon helped serve. But Dandridge died in front of 12 witnesses. One physician said the word that changed everything: poisoned. By morning, multiple doctors had examined the body, and Grimby learned Solomon had been serving that night. For the first time, someone could be connected to multiple deaths. Solomon knew the investigation was closing in. 6 targets left. He'd never get another chance. So he decided to kill 6 men at once. June 15th, 1853. 6 prominent slave traders meeting at Henderson and Associates. Evening. Private. Solomon spent weeks preparing concentrated toxin. Instead of individual doses, he'd inject it into the building's gas lighting system. At 8 p.m., the office windows glowed. The meeting started. Solomon's trap activated. 30 minutes later, silence. Solomon entered through the back. 6 men sat frozen around the table. Their eyes, the only part still moving, tracked him around the room. He approached each man, identified himself, explained what was happening, described how they'd remained conscious through burial and suffocation. The terror in their eyes was profound. Then footsteps. The door opened. Thomas Grimby stood there. 6 apparently dead bodies. Solomon standing over them. "So it's true," Grimby said. "Someone has been systematically murdering Charleston's elite, and you're responsible." "They destroyed my family," Solomon replied simply. "This is justice." Grimby understood the brutal realities, but more voices approached, others coming to investigate. "I'm not running," Solomon said. "Let them come. Maybe people will understand that even slaves have limits to what they'll endure in silence." When constables burst in, Solomon calmly confessed. The compound, the methods, the victims selected for their involvement in slave trading. The trial became controversial not because of doubt, Solomon confessed, but because of the moral questions it raised. Grimby's coverage created a sensation. He published Solomon's journal excerpts nationwide. The 6 survivors testified about lying paralyzed, fully aware, hearing their deaths pronounced. Colonel Harrison Vance: "I could hear everything, feel everything, but couldn't move. When my wife wept over my body, I desperately wanted to comfort her, but I was trapped inside my own corpse while they arranged my burial." The revelation that 3 earlier victims, Fitzpatrick, Calvert, and Dandridge, had been buried alive created outcry across the South. Solomon showed no remorse. His final statement: "I was trained to preserve life. But when this society destroyed my family while calling it legal, I learned that healing knowledge can also ensure justice. I don't ask for mercy because none was shown to my children. When you condemn me, remember, I didn't create the system that makes such revenge necessary. Guilty on all counts. Death by hanging. October 15th, 1853. Over 2,000 people watched Solomon hang. His final words, "I die knowing 9 men experienced the terror my children felt. That makes my death worthwhile. But this system will continue. Other families will suffer. Remember, even the most patient man has limits." Solomon was buried in an unmarked grave, but his journal was never returned. Grimby had made copies, then buried the original under a magnolia tree in St. Michael's Cemetery, near the graves of Solomon's victims. In 1923, cemetery workers discovered what Grimby had documented: 9 coffins with deep scratch marks clawed from inside, bodies positioned like they fought for their lives. And beneath the tree, Solomon's journal. Charleston's government sealed the records, sensitive historical material. But everyone knew they were protecting reputations of families whose ancestors profited from slave trading. Solomon's story had lasting impact. Slave owners became paranoid about educated slaves with medical knowledge. New laws restricted access to books and training, because they'd learned education could transform the oppressed into dangerous opponents. The case advanced forensic medicine and sparked national debate about slavery. If a man like Solomon, educated, skilled, trusted, could harbor years of rage and plan methodical revenge, what about millions of other enslaved people? The stable institution suddenly looked unstable. So here's my question. Was Solomon Fairfax a murderer, or a man who had every legal avenue to justice stripped away? When the system fails you completely, when your family is destroyed and there's no court you can turn to, what are you supposed to do? 9 men experienced the terror they inflicted on others. They had hours buried alive to think about the families they destroyed for profit. Solomon died knowing he delivered justice, the only way available to him. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story made you think about justice, revenge, and systems that push people past their breaking point, subscribe, hit that bell, and share this. History isn't simple. It's messy and brutal, and full of people pushed to desperate acts. Remember, the past is never truly buried. It's always waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to dig.